Good morning. Today is Sunday, July 12th, and we will be looking at the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14. 14 begins the Passion narrative, the last days of Jesus, and the Passion and the Passover. So, starts out 2 days before the Passover. The scribes were looking for a way to arrest Jesus, the ones he warned us to be wary of. Then there is the scene of the anointing at Bethany. Simon the leper, and he sat at the table. A woman came with the alabaster jar of costly ointment of nard. She broke open the jar and poured the ointment on his head. And some who were there said to one another in anger, "Why the ointment was wasted in this way? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and the money given to the poor." And they scolded her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has performed a good service for me. You always have the poor with you, and you can show kindness to them whenever you wish, but you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body before its burial. Truly, I tell you, whenever the good news is proclaimed, the whole world will know what she has done." So, I just preached a sermon on this passage, so I'm not going to preach another sermon on it. But there's a lot in here, love and devotion from this woman, and also Jesus' troubling statement about what do we do with the poor. The poor will always be with you. He's referring to a teaching of Moses. And really what Jesus wants us to do is take the opportunity to care for the poor the way she cared for him. Care for each other the way she cared for him. And so that's my takeaway from that. I just didn't need to preach a whole sermon on it today. So then you have Judas Iscariot going to Judas Iscariot is going to the chief priests, and they give him the money to betray Jesus. And then we have the Passover with the disciples. The first day, there's 2 nights of Passover. So the first night, he wanted to eat with his disciples, and so they found the upper room for Passover, and they all gathered together and ate. And Jesus said, "Somebody's going to betray me." We know how that works. The person who was dipping the bread with him is the betrayer, and they were all just kind of shocked. And then after that, he institutes the Lord's Supper. He took a loaf of bread while they were in the middle of their eating. And then he took a cup and drank from it and said, "This is my blood." And then after he institutes the Lord's Supper, they go up to the Mount of Olives. And he tells them that they will all become deserters. And then Peter says to him, "No, I will never become a deserter." And Jesus says to him, "Not only will you desert me, you'll deny me 3 times. Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all of them said the same. Said, but not did. So human. It's such a real scene. This is real people. This is how they would react in these situations. And then Jesus goes to Gethsemane, and he takes his disciples with him, and he says to them, "Sit here while I pray." And he took Peter, James, and John and began to be distressed and agitated. And he said to them, "I am deeply grieved. Remain here and keep awake." Just stay with me. Remain with me. Watch and pray. And then he went a little further away from them, threw himself on the ground. He prays to the Father, "Lord, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will but thine be done. And when he came back, they were asleep. He said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour? Keep awake and pray, that you may not come into the time of trial, and the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. This is where this passage is. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. People just fell asleep. They couldn't stay up. And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came a third time and said to them, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough. Too late. Time's up. The hour has come. And I'll be betrayed into the hands of the sinners. That's what he calls them, the sinners. Get up and be going. My betrayer's at hand. Judas comes, gives him the kiss. He gets arrested. And then this happens, which happens in other Gospels, that... and some of the Gospels, it's Peter that does it. As the slave of the high priest, Caiaphas, gets his ear cut off. Now, we know it's Caiaphas, but Mark doesn't identify him as such. He just calls him the high priest. And Jesus doesn't heal the ear. It's just noted that the guy's ear gets chopped off. So in other Gospels, he heals the ear and rebukes Peter, but not in this one. There's just a ear chopping situation with the slave of Caiaphas, the high priest. And then he's interrogated before the council and upsets the chief priest again, like we saw in Matthew, so much that he rent his clothes. And then Peter denies Jesus 3 times, as Jesus had predicted. And he broke down and wept. And he realized what he had done. The cock crowed. Mark has 16 chapters, and the 16th chapter is predominantly hints of the resurrection, is what I call it. It's not a lot of resurrection stories, but this is Jesus' passion. So the beginning of the end of the gospel. Have a blessed day.